Hi, I'm Adrienne Pasquarelli, Special Projects Editor and Senior Reporter at Ad Age. And welcome to another edition of the Marketer's Brief podcast, our weekly discussion about marketing news and trends that have the industry buzzing. It's a big year for pharmaceutical brands, especially given the skyrocketing rise in popularity of GLP-1 weight loss drugs. One maker of such drugs is Eli Lilly and Company, which makes a Zepbound medication. Today, we'll be talking with Lina Polimeni, Chief Corporate Brand Officer at Lilly. She'll talk about the marketing we can expect to see from our company this year. Now here's my conversation with Lina. Hi, Lina. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Adrienne. Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
So you've been at Lilly a long time now, and you've seen quite the transformations over the years. Can you tell us a little bit about how the company has evolved in the last few years since you moved over from heading media to heading brand?
Yes, I've been at Lilly for 20 years. It's going to be my 21st year. So I've seen quite a bit of transformation, both from a company perspective as well as how we approach advertising. I think the one thing that has not changed across those 20 years has been the fact that we've always truly put the patient at the center of everything we do. And I think from my transition from handling just the media to the corporate brand, I think has been just really rooted into that. So we took a look at what makes Lilly different. We started this in Tokyo when we were trying to establish, the advertising for Lilly as a corporate brand. And the beauty about the strategy and the brand is that we really didn't have to invent anything. We really just had a lot of interviews with key people and anybody within the company, and understood that the difference in our positioning has always been that we see a person on the other side of the prescription. So the humanity of the brand. And I would say the change and the transformation has happened rooted into that in the advertising. And then at the same time, if you look at the company itself, we really reoriented, maybe 5 to 6 years ago, really reoriented our pipeline to be really centered about where the biggest patient need is. So when you look at the medicines that we try to get to market, or where we insist on trying to get to market, is really where patients really either don't have a good solution for, or there's still a huge patient needs. And that's why you will find us in 30 years worth of fight to find at first the initial, answer for Alzheimer's, or even in the smallest of gastric cancers indication, because that's where the patient need is.
What are some of your big marketing priorities this year? We're in early part of the year, so what can we expect to see from the roadmap of priorities for you?
And what a beginning of the year we've had so far. I would say, I'm really excited about where the brand is going, Lilly as a brand. So obviously this is as an advertising conversation. That's really what gets me the most excited. I would say we've had an evolution starting from our first foray in Tokyo to today, but really centered around really differentiating as what makes us different, which is the centering in humanity. So I'm so excited from a creative perspective to have, another run at a different iteration of the campaign and continue to evolve the brand. I think 2021 for us was about establishing ourselves as a medicine company, so declaring to the world who we were, and then to continuing that throughout the years. Last year with Get Better has really been around explaining to people what we do, which is always and constantly trying to get better, because when we get better, medicine can get better, so the people can get better. And I'm excited. 2025, we're really going to step out and express what it takes to be a Lilly and what are our values, and trying to communicate that to the public while continuing to express our work and what we do to improve patients' lives. So really excited about the creative execution that we have ahead of us.
And we can talk a little bit about some of that. One area I'd like to jump into is around this GLP-1 weight loss drugs. Now, I know Lilly has the Zepbound drug in that very popular category. Why do you think this is such a growth area, and how are you approaching that from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, it's a growth area both from a medical perspective and also from a cultural perspective. So from a marketing point of view, we're really approaching it how we always do, which is keeping the patient at the center, but also understanding, I think that's where Lilly has changed a little bit over the years in terms of advertising, understanding the cultural context in which patients operate and in which the brand will operate. And so from that perspective, I think with obesity and GLP-1s, we really had two big jobs to get done that we started last year with the campaign at the Oscars, Oscars and then will continue through the years. One is help educate the public to understand that obesity is a disease and that people that suffer from obesity have been suffering their own life versus what society often perceives and kind of pushes on people that suffer with obesity is that this is some sort of moral failure, that you just don't have willpower and that, it's kind of your fault. So there's a lot of shame associated with the condition. And that's kind of the first job, is removing the shame from a medical condition, because any health condition doesn't really have a place for shaming. And so that's kind of what we started last year with a film that was, properly titled Shame, that we aired around the Oscars. But then the second piece is really taking back this cultural conversation. So I think over the past 2 or 3 years, you've seen the brand not shy away from being in important cultural moments and in important cultural conversations. But the way we have done it has been by redirecting attention to what matters. So at the Oscars last year, we knew that, a lot of the conversation was going to be about dramatic transformations on the red carpet and, a lot of this kind of, in a way, not appropriate talk around weight and weight loss and the misuse of GLP-1's medication. And so during that time, we took the opportunity to remind people with this film that we aired during the Oscars big night that obesity is a disease, that people suffering from obesity need to be able to get the medication, and that none of these medicines have been approved or studied for anything else but being able to be utilized by people that have a medical condition. So, I think culturally, it's an important moment for the brand because, pharmaceutical brands tend to not want to enter the cultural conversation. And we felt we had a strong point of view because it was rooted in patient safety, which is the most important thing for us. And those things have a place in cultural conversations. And so the point of view has really been shame has no place in matters of health, including obesity. And then medicines need to get in the hands of people that they've been studied for and that they are safe for, and they cannot be misused off label.
So that was the Oscars last year. What are you planning, or are you planning any marketing around Zepbound now or recently?
I think for 2025, we will, as a brand, as a Lilly brand, we will always continue to be careful around what are the most meaningful conversations in health that are happening in cultures and where can the brand add value. So it's not about advertising about ourselves as a company, but more so where can the brand add value. So, I just gave you the example of the Oscars, for example, but in the Olympics, the first round of Olympics, it was kind of the same thing. It was after COVID. So just redirecting to let's not be distracted by how many medals we win. Let's make sure that people understand that health is the most important thing. Did the same at the Oscars. And I think in 2025, you can probably expect the brand to continue to identify key cultural moments, whether they are for viewership or for conversations, when we'll be able to continue to shine a light of the importance of health. I personally think the GLP-1 conversations, weight loss conversation will continue to happen likely in 2025. I think where we have an opportunity as a brand and where I'm excited to continue to explore is explaining to people, again, not just that this is about health, but also there's so much more than losing weight. There are implications of obesities that impact your quality of sleep and sleep apnea and, heart health. There is so much more that comes from treating obesity as a disease. And I think that's an important conversation that, we can help with as a brand. So I think as a guiding light, you'll see the Lilly brand wanted to not only stand for patients, but like not being afraid to have conversations where it matters, but also always redirecting towards health.
That idea of shame is super powerful. I'm wondering if you've seen, since airing that campaign and kind of taking that tone, if you have seen the cultural perception shift at all to being more accepting, especially since the use of GLP-1s is becoming so much more widespread.
I think there's definitely been a shift in conversation and tonality, I would say, of the conversation before. If you really put yourself mentally where we were before the Oscars of last year, it was really kind of a hush hush. People weren't talking too much about the misuse. I think misuse now is understood a little bit more. It's not just an advertising effort. There's a lot of education that goes, beyond definitely the advertising. So I think there's more understanding that obesity is a real disease. I think there's a lot of work to be done to really take the shame out of obesity, and also to understand that where obesity strikes the hardest sometimes is where the biggest inequity in the healthcare ecosystem are. And so that's another big mission of both the Lilly brand and Lilly as a company, which is and I think it's another place where you can see us leaning also as an advertiser, is where we find that the healthcare ecosystem in and of itself create inequities by which people do not have the same access or the same opportunity to get healthy. That's likely a place where we will want to lean in, either in conversations or with programs like we've done during the Olympics.
What about some other healthcare categories? Lilly recently aired a spot during the Grammys about the importance of early detection in breast cancer. Can you talk a little bit about that campaign?
Yes, that campaign is called In Your Hands. It's another film still under the master brand of umbrella of Get Better. So when you looked at kind of the work that was generated through the Get Better campaign, you had the obesity work we just discussed, Alzheimer's was another one, and atopic dermatitis. And this was kind of our last installation around oncology specifically. It was important for us to take these conversations further than Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We think that during Breast Cancer Awareness Month is kind of like an expected conversation, super crowded. And for us, again, as a medicine company, health is the most important thing. And so there were two big things that we wanted to communicate through that film. I think you will continuing to find kind of this human feel in the film. This was footage that we received from a director that really aligned with the brand look and feel. We developed this with Wyden and Kennedy. And then we created this beautiful story of a woman just running through her day to day and just kind of telling the story of what she does through her day to day with her hands. And as part of that day, through a self exam, she finds a lump and then gets into the doctor's office to be screened. So there were two key things that we wanted to communicate. One, obviously, the importance of cell screening and the importance of that conversation to be with your doctor. That's another thing you will continue to find, which is really pushing, in a world where social media and a overload of information get a lot of quick fixes to people. We continue to believe that the most important conversation happens with the doctor. It doesn't happen with the brand. It doesn't happen in advertising. So that was number one. Screening is important. Early screening is important. Your doctor can help you figure out what's the right screening for you. But I think the other piece is really a piece of hope around, the conversation around cancer hasn't evolved in advertising for a long time. And what we found, it doesn't really match the advances that we're seeing in the medical community and that we're seeing in research, to where, a cancer that's caught early has a lot of potential for treatment, and there are a lot of options. I don't see that matching still the belief that people have in culture, and sometimes even the way cancer is depicted in television or in general communication, where it's just kind of a death sentence. It is absolutely a serious disease, but early detection empowers people, and early detection empowers people with their doctors to find new treatment. So we thought that was not just a matter of, PSA and education, but really a message of hope. You have more power in your hand the more you understand the path that's in front of you and the earlier that cancers are detected.
And that spot ran on TV. Are there any other channels that are part of the campaign? How can we expect to see Lilly show up in other channels showing this message?
Yes, I think so. For a couple of things, from a brand perspective, we always activate 360, or we do our best to activate 360. So all of our campaign, you'll see them on film to tell a story, on TV to tell a longer story, and then we'll take chunks of that story to, trying to activate where it makes the most sense. Sometimes we use spokespeople, our athletes being the biggest one of them. And then for oncology specifically, I don't want to reveal too much, but there's going to be kind of a second part of this also coming on TV. And so the first part, which is In Your Hands, you will see it. Obviously, it's aired in film, but at the same time, it will be pushed through in digital, and there will be a further conversations. When you are diagnosed with cancer, there's going to be kind of a second part to that film that we can talk about hopefully in the future. But we see kind of our oncology proof point taking shape in the first part of the year pretty strongly across different channels.
And you mentioned working with Wyden and Kennedy on that effort. How long have you worked with them?
Since the Tokyo campaign 2020.
Is that an AOR relationship, or do you work with other agencies, ever do anything in-house?
So from a Lilly perspective, there's the master brand, and then we have the product campaigns. The product campaigns have a variety of different agencies. From a master brand kind of Lilly corporate point of view, that's only Wyden and Kennedy. And so it's been a relationship that was started in 2020. And I think together, as you likely know, they just have a very refined way of looking at creative. And I think what worked really well in this partnership has been just the amount of care that we put in the message and the creative. So they care about this brand just as much as we do, because they understand that it goes to people. So finding the alignment on the humanity message has been a really great match with Wyden and Kennedy.
A lot of the work that you've mentioned has been around live events, live TV events, the Oscars, the Grammys, the Olympics. How do you see those live events being an important channel, or why do you see them being an important channel for these larger messages?
There's the first obvious place, which is reach, and it's and it's reach and attention, obviously, that we can obtain from a public awareness perspective and a global public point of view. I think we have a pretty sophisticated way to look at the media placements, both from a master brand perspective as well as the product's perspective. From a product perspective, we're trying to get as close as possible to the people suffering from a disease. When it comes to Lilly as a brand, obviously general public is more important, the perception of culture is more important. And those live events we try to align to, some of them depend on the cultural conversation. So the example of the Oscars last year, it was important because we knew that's where the conversation was going to be happening around misuse of GLP-1s. And then, there's a couple of other things. There's like events like the Grammys or events like big moments that we still know are tentpole, but also tend to gather the family still a lot, and then have a pull through on social media and in other channels. So the Grammys would be an example of that. I think the sports event are very different in my experience. And what I've learned, the more I've played, on how to position this brand is not just the sports creative viewership and the sports live event will continue to gather the right public. I believe that in sports event, people have their hearts and minds open. You're in a different mind state when you're watching your favorite team. And this comes from a person that's not a sports person. So it's truly an observational piece. And especially when you're watching a platform that's so unifying as the Olympics. The Olympics has been truly a different animal, because even seeing it live, even when your country loses, you're still kind of happy because you're cheering for your country and you're seeing them at the top echelon of their game. But having, families together, for example, it's important for discussions around Alzheimer's, or having, the openness of mind and heart. So like I said, and being that place is very important when you talk about breast cancer, where you talk about removing shame from obesity. So I find that it's a mix of reach and frequency clearly, but it's also a different positioning because of the mind state of the viewership.
Right. They're more open, more
Yeah.
receptive. We are almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you about one other big trending topic. It's around AI, and we've discussed this before, how it can be the next big shiny thing for marketers. How are your feelings about it, and are you using AI at all in your process?
We look at AI in our processes where you don't, this is my opinion, obviously, but we look at AI in kind of, I don't want to call them tedious processes, but processes that are necessary when it comes to day-to-day workflow. I believe still that, there's certainly a place for AI in the future and in creative, especially when it comes to execution. Right now, again, based on everything we said in this podcast, this is an extremely human brand. This is a brand that has to do with understanding hopes and fears of people and being extremely delicate and respectful on how we treat those hope and fears once we understand them. So I very much value not just the value of creative, but the value of like human brains and hearts coming together and being very, very protective of this brand and the message that we send to people. That's not to say that there's not going to be a place downstream, but I would say right now we're looking at AI mostly for our own internal processes that allow us to spend more time to think through creative. I am extremely protective of creative and extremely protective of the creative minds that get to work on this brand. I believe we have such an incredible team, both at Wyden and Kennedy as well as Lilly. And so I think what's been working so well so far is just being like this utmost level of respect that we have for understanding that we get to tell the story of human experience. And so I'm very, very protective of that. But downstream, I think, in execution, we definitely utilize that and it helps us making more room for having those kind of human conversations we need to have.
We are out of time. Lina, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That was Lina Polimeni, Chief Corporate Brand Officer at Eli Lilly, and I'm Adrienne Pasquarelli, Special Projects Editor and Senior Reporter at Ad Age. I'd like to thank our producer, Lauren Ciardio, and invite you to subscribe to the Marketer's Brief podcast on your favorite player. We promise to keep it brief, or at least short enough for your morning coffee. Thanks for tuning in.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.